Welcome to this Money Monday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tabacco, and today, as always, we open the show with the Dow Jones Industrial Average raging once again, as we spoke about for the last couple of weeks, anything over 26,000 with any sort of good news, and this market could be on a rocket shot to 27,000 and above. We just reached up to that 27,000 number on Friday. This morning touching 27.8, almost 26.9. And through 27, with this Iran stuff behind us, with the Fed saying they're not going to be doing anything with the rates for a little while, seems to be a smooth playing field out there. And keep your guns loaded, as Donald Trump would say, cocked and loaded, because this market could have a lot more to the upside. And with any good news whatsoever, this thing will be on a rocket shot throughout the summer. And a rocket shot indeed it is for cryptocurrency, with Bitcoin blazing. We talked about anything above 8,000 could put it to 9, through 9, and 10 would be a double-digit technical. It's way through 10,000, on its way to 11, just touching up on that 11,000. And this could be another meteoric rise back to that 20,000 range. Keep your eye on it. Don't get over anxious. It could develop here. It could come back down, consolidate, have a little bit of support in there before bouncing up again. But I think there's all more good news to the upside in Bitcoin as well. We'll talk about all that cryptocurrency and more later on. And joining me again as usual, my co-host, managing director of Liquid Lunch, Frankie Morano. Frank, happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you, John. And Money Monday it is if people have invested in Bitcoin. Wow, what's behind this rally?
Well, this rally seems to be there are no more futures trading. So institutional investors can no longer short Bitcoin, which was putting some pressure on it. And now you got people thinking, hey, Facebook's getting into cryptocurrency. It's going to probably be a little faster adoption now because people will start thinking, well, Facebook can do it. It must be legit. Facebook's cryptocurrency is not Bitcoin. They're two separate things. Bitcoin is an investment vehicle. It's a transfer of assets, a way to transfer assets, but it's very volatile. And I will remind you to do your homework. Be aware, be educated, and don't invest in Bitcoin unless you have the intention of losing every penny. It is that speculative, Frank.
You alluded to our tensions with Iran, and that's going to be one of the big stories we're following. We have Pat Buchanan coming up next, who has been one of the most ardent voices against military intervention in the Middle East for a long time. So we're thrilled that he's going to be on the show. And then in the Politics and Power panel, all of our experts are going to break that down. And that is indeed one of the stories we're following as we have a look at the headlines. On the same day that President Trump is expected to hit Iran with more sanctions, the head of the Iranian Navy is warning that another U.S. drone could always be shot down. The shoot-down of an American drone last week led President Trump to order strikes on Iranian targets, but he pulled back at the last minute. Amid lingering tensions between Washington and Tehran, Trump took to Twitter this morning to say the U.S. request for Iran is very simple: no nuclear weapons and no further sponsoring of terror. Speaking of the Middle East, President Trump yesterday seemed to shrug off the brutal dismembering of Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post columnist, just days after a UN report described how a team of Saudi assassins called Mr. Khashoggi a sacrificial animal before his murder. The report urged an FBI investigation into the slaying, but in an interview with NBC's Meet the Press, President Trump said the episode had already been thoroughly investigated. He said the Middle East is a vicious, hostile place, and noted that Saudi Arabia is an important trading partner with the United States. And finally, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is about to unveil a plan to eliminate the student loan debt of every American. The 2020 Democratic presidential candidate will submit his proposal in Congress today that would wipe out $1.6 trillion in debt for around 45 million people. It'll be paid for with a tax on Wall Street speculation. Oh, yes. A tax on Wall Street speculation.
Not that. Not that. When I say it's noon on Wall Street, we're not looking for taxes out there, all right? Leave us alone, Bernie.
You talk about something that is going to bring back the days of people jumping out the windows on Wall Street, which actually never really happened. There was not a really big epidemic, as we're led to believe. But Bernie Sanders is officially unveiling this plan today. Just a few moments ago, the senator was talking about his proposal and why people like John should be taxed. Have a look at Senator Sanders.
Today, The major Wall Street banks are larger than ever. Their profits are soaring, and their CEOs receive huge compensation packages. Our proposal, which costs $2.2 trillion over 10 years, will be fully paid for by a tax on Wall Street speculation, similar to what exists in dozens of countries around the world.
Isn't this amazing that Bernie Sanders is going to put a tax on Wall Street speculation? So if you're a speculator, the government under Bernie Sanders wants to get their hand in your pocket. And one of the key things that a free market society and a capitalist society relies on is people who are entrepreneurs willing to take risk. So he's talking about speculation means you're taking a risk. You're risking your money for a greater reward, and that's speculating that the market will go higher. So capitalism
or lower, right?
And free market capitalism are both under attack now by both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders.
Well, it's going to be interesting. So speculation, it's basically it's a bet. It doesn't have to be higher. You could also be betting a stock's going to go lower, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could be a short seller and you could be
and that's
speculating.
Just so I know, because I'm not that educated in this,
Yeah.
that's a form of speculation, right?
Of course it is. And for those of you watching at home, I always try to break this down to the simplest terms. You may not know this because your broker will never even tell you about this. But there's a way that you can profit off stocks going down. So some people go out and invest and buy low and hope to sell high. Other people, like myself over the course of my career, try to identify stocks that are overvalued and then place a bet that that stock at some point in the future will be lower, and that's called short selling. Both of them include risk and speculation of something that may happen in the future. So if you start to nibble away and tax speculation, you start to take players out of the free market society, and you wind up being a nationalized market system, which is very bad.
Speaking of finance, we're going to get into this in a big way with our friend Tom from BCB Bank, which is our favorite bank.
That's right.
Because it's the only bank that has dozens of branches all tuned to this show every day at noon Eastern. And if you want to become our favorite bank, only way is to get more branches in your particular bank to tune to our show.
That's right. And we talk about politics, we talk about the markets, we talk about cryptocurrencies. But on Monday, to jumpstart your week, we talk about Money Mondays. And when you want to talk about money, you bring in the CEO of BCB Bank, Tom Coughlin, and Tom's going to talk to us not only about the recent Fed decisions and how that affects banks like BCB and affects you at home, but Tom's also going to talk to us a little later on about lending to businesses and how higher interest rates could affect that. So on Money Mondays, we bring you the real people who know where the rubber meets the road, and Tom is just that,
right.
a banker.
A lot of folks been wondering what he's been up to since leaving the New York Football Giants. But it was great to hang out with you over the weekend, John. You and I co-hosted this a terrific event for Roger Stone, which there's a big article about in the New York Post. And you wouldn't know that John and I co-hosted the event if you read the New York Post article. But our Liquid Lunch cameras were there. Here's a little bit of what you missed if you weren't at the event.
We're all family, so we're here to support our cousin in this time of struggle. You know, let him know his family's behind him. I think he's being used as a whipping boy by the liberal media and the liberal prosecutors.
We're family, so we may be a little biased, but I don't think so, because I really think what's happening with him, he's being railroaded.
We believe in his cause and all Americans' cause, that like-minded people like him.
I'm here because he is not guilty of what he's been accused of, and I think it's important for Americans to stand up for people who are standing up for them.
To me, this event, well, I know there are a lot of Trump supporters in the room, not everybody, is really non-political. To me, this event is about standing up for the best values of America and the best values of the American system. I want to welcome the one and only Roger Stone.
Well, thanks to John Tobacco and Frank Morano for putting together this terrific gathering. Thank all of you for being here. Let me say that it's in times of adversity you find out who your real friends are. And that has been the blessing of this experience. And you are all my friends. I will go trial in November. I will tell the truth at that trial, and with God's help, I will be vindicated. In life, when you take some knocks, when things don't go your way, when you are defeated, when you strive again and again, but what you seek eludes your grasp, when you are dejected and you're disappointed and you're ready to throw in the towel, that's the time you have to get up off the mat and get back in the game. The story of Nixon is a story of persistence. It's a story of resilience. It's an American story. He wrote very famously, "A man is not finished when he is defeated. He is only finished when he quits." With your help, I will never quit. Thank you and God bless you.
Here's a guy that seems like he never quits, and he's,
that's for sure.
you know, trotting the globe and the country, getting the word out there about the Stone Defense Fund, because he's behind about $2 million as the full weight of the U.S. government comes weighing down on him, and he's the only guy left that's under federal indictment from a crime that Robert Mueller says did not happen. So you figure it out, and if you can, check out StoneDefenseFund.com, and if you could make a donation or send some kind words and prayers, Roger is thankful for all of it.
And I must say, I am very surprised at some of my friends on the left, and I'll be interested to hear what Richard Roth, who is a distinguished attorney, but happens to be left of center, that they seem almost giddy at the prospect of Roger going to trial. I mean, you would think people that have been critical of prosecutorial overreach and the politicization of the Department of Justice, you would think that they would look for an opportunity to champion this cause. You know, Alan Dershowitz, this is what's so refreshing about him, and we're going to have him on the show one of these days, because he went out and represented, you know, hate groups that wanted to march through Skokie, Illinois. He didn't agree with them. He's Jewish. And yet he comes out, he didn't vote for Trump, and he comes out and says how nonsensical all these Trump investigations are. Why can't people on the left be intellectually honest enough to say that Roger's getting a raw deal here?
I think, you know, they don't want to take anything to our side, Frankie. And we'll talk more about that. It's Money Monday. On Money Monday, the food's on the money. Danny and Freddie sent down 2 antipastos, not one. Rice balls, potato croquettes, all that good stuff and more. Pat Buchanan, former presidential advisor, coming up right after this.